happening on the interpersonal scale in the way people treat one another and acting like, oh, poor me. Oh, my life is so hard. I can't do anything because something bad happened to me in the past. So I can't take responsibility from here and start doing the right thing to other people and start paying it forward to myself and others. It's like that's where we start breaking this chain. And that's where we start like taking these big ideas and bringing them down to something we can tangibly deal with. We don't suck other people's energy. We don't lie to people to get them to do things. We don't tell a story of guilt in order to sell somebody what we want them to hear. We learn to speak clearly and ask questions when we need to understand where people are coming from and be able to ask for help when we need it. The type of manipulation that we're talking about in this episode is the most sinister of all, one human manipulating another for their personal gain. And this can be groups of people manipulating other groups of people for the gain of their group.
Manipulation is to control or play upon by artful, unfair, or insidious means.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the End Evil podcast. My name is Chris Jansen, and evil is the destruction of freedom. And we're living in a world where we're surrounded by all types of evil, and most of those types of evil are hardly recognized by the general public, and they kind of just go on accepting all these forms of stealing that are going around us, and a lot of them are subtle, and a lot of them are tricky and insidious, and they creep up on us, and we're born into them, and we're living in this culture of accepting a lot of evil deeds, and it's hard to see sometimes. So that's why we get together on these podcasts to discuss topics that are kind of hard to look at in the individual sometimes. And I find that when I bring in multiple minds, that I can get a more nuanced perspective on these things. And I've had a really awesome conversation with my friend, the guys in the One Great Work Warriors, last week, called Methods of Manipulation. And we were talking about the many ways that all people are manipulated. And we're going to continue that conversation tonight. And we're going to have a live roundtable. And I already have some wonderful people right here in the meeting with me, and I'm going to start bringing them in. And we're going to continue the conversation from last week on the methods of manipulation. And I will put our link if you want to join. If you're out there in the audience and you want to join us today for this conversation, you can. I would love it if you could turn on your camera and turn on your mic and join us, and we can hear your point of view too. But even if you don't want to turn on your camera, we still would like to see you and hear from you. You still join us, or you can join us in the chat as well. And let me go ahead and start bringing in some guests. I got Brandon Spencer with me today. Sarah Cross is here. Will Keller, Leslie Powers, and Chris Nelson. And you should be able to bring everybody in here in a minute here. There's why Restream's doing something new with how we set up screens, I guess. Got to figure out how to get everybody on the screen. It's not the way it used to be. How you doing, Sarah? Let's see you. Oh, you're muted still, I think.
Hi, everybody.
I can't get the screen layout to work right. Yeah, did you have any thoughts about methods of manipulation, Sarah?
Well, a few, but I'd like to know what everybody else really thinks too. Mostly, I think a lot of the main issues that we have on this planet globally is that we've allowed our capability to understand and utilize the tool of thought, emotion, and action. We have forgotten how to use that, and we have allowed people who don't have the best interests of humanity to do whatever they want with that, which has created Hell World. So that alone allows a multitude of issues that allow us to be manipulated and, done with as they want to do with us.
Is it a combination, I wonder, of people not recognizing the fact that they're being manipulated? I mean, I have a sense that deep down we all know, and I think that does bring about a certain amount of guilt in a lot of people. But I don't think, more personally, from my point of view, the largest percent of the population has very like a small bit, are they sensing, their radars are sensing the amount of manipulation that's out there. And if they were able to sort of like all of a sudden realize just how bad it is and just how many different modes of manipulation, it'd be so overwhelming. And I think that's kind of the process a lot of people go through, is getting overwhelmed and coming to realize just how many ways they have been already manipulated. It's hard to face, but yeah.
It is absolutely, Chris. It is a lot to deal with. Looking at it at a larger scale when it's a simple problem, but yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and share, if anybody's in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and share the link if you want to join us just now, and then I'll pass it on to Brandon. And Brandon, Spencer, you want to say a few words?
Yes, thank
That
you.
sounds like a funeral or something. You want to say a few words for the loss of humanity's ability to reason?
Yeah, thank you to all of the wonderful individuals that are joining us. But Chris had touched upon a very important word in the original one, which was collectivism. And one of the things that we are, seeing now is these methods of collectivism still being pretty much spewed in all aspects of life. And no matter if it's getting you to try to think with your irrational emotions, or just the whole emotional mind control aspect of it, are getting you to identify because we live in a, a culture where people want to identify externally, and that's what we see a lot in this whole collectivist rhetoric. And collectivism goes under many names: communism, socialism, Fabianism. It even goes under the term democracy, Bolshevism, Hellenism, Helmaoism. It goes under the term, or many words of all of the cute isms that sound appealing on paper, but when you actually apply it, it's nothing more than just ego identification and just moral relativism, getting you to externally identify, which the etymology of the word identify just simply means to make the same, like sameness or oneness. And we see this in in all forms of methods of collectivist talk. If it's the cult indoctrination, or just like the whole schooling programming, these methods right here, getting you to identify externally, because something that we've talked about how many times, that internal wholeness, that internal integrity is not there, is missing. So collectivist ideology is one of the most dangerous ideologies that mankind can ever fall for.
Is it all for one or one for all? It's kind of a confusing trick of words they do. I think it was Hillary Clinton, who was pretty famous for one of those statements that, I can't remember exactly how she says it, but basically the idea is that you as the individual should always, sacrifice the good of the greater whole, which is more important than just silly little you. Looks like we got Derek Bartolocelli joined us, and Conrad. Welcome, Conrad. I heard you did a great interview with Leslie and Derek on Dissolving Divide. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and Leslie and I did this episode, it's been almost over a year, I think, about the fish tank. And the fish tank was the idea that, we're all born into this fish tank, like the fish in Nemo that are pets. And we're so accustomed and used to the fish tank that it's hard to look at it and see it for what it is. And also, when we're talking about freedom, we're talking about like the ocean that most of us have never been in. We've always been in this fish tank of this culture of slavery, indoctrination, and manipulation is the way that we're, kept in this tank of sorts. So, you want to comment on that, Leslie? Oh, your mic is muted, I think. Well,
okay. So sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. So what's coming to my mind is the term obfuscation, which means to make something obscure, unclear, or unintelligible. And the idea is to muddy the waters, right? So that people can't see the truth because it's murky or changeable and things, so they can never really know or fully get their hands on what's real. And we can see that in, the media and how changeable messaging is, how, there's a trend towards moral relativism. There's use of symbols and hidden messages in movies or songs. There's the changing of meanings of words and language. So there's all this going on where people aren't seeing they're not solid in what they're seeing. Okay, it's murky. And then there's the compartmentalization where there's separation and division between people. There are categories, and polarizations, and the playing of people against each other. So there's this overall chaos, that becomes the soup we're swimming in. The water that we're in is this big, melodrama of chaos and hidden, occulted. The truth is hidden. The truth is there, but very hard to see. And I think that's one of the biggest methods of manipulation. And it hides the existence of evil intentions. And that was one of my biggest breakthroughs listening to Mark Passio, was to really take off the rose-colored glasses and see that there are people in this world that truly don't give a shit about us and that are using us for their own gain. And we need to stop giving so much credit, to people in power and think that, oh, nobody's really that evil. But it's true. People are that evil and have evil intentions. And I think that if people could break through that wall of the fish tank, we would make some ground. My thoughts.
Make some ground in the fish tank. That's a funny allegorical thought there. Like SpongeBob. Will, why don't we pass it to you next? And feel free, anybody, just jump in, when the time's right.
Right on. Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. A lot of great points already. I'm going to touch on, for a method of manipulation, is the inversion principle. This is something that is, chaos sorcery, inverting nature itself, which is ultimately an inversion of life, and it's an inversion of self, right? Because to have separation from nature is to not know yourself and have separation from yourself. And then one of the biggest categories within that is reality, right? Nature, reality, it's one and the same. So we've mentioned relativism and solipsism and these things, but to have no truth, to say that truth does not exist and objective reality doesn't exist, well, then lies don't matter, slavery doesn't matter, there is no wrongdoings, there is no right. So you see how everything is flipped over on its head. This is a huge principle that the social engineers utilize. And the inversion principle trickles down into every category: education, health, the laws of nature, right? They'll talk about the physical, but not the metaphysical. There is no such thing as the ether. So, that's a part of obfuscation. But I think what it does, it makes people feel powerless, right? And we even see this like in the truth community. When someone kind of awakens to what is going on in the world, they still have not activated, right? Free will must be activated. People go, well, what kind of change can I do? So this is the programming and conditioning of the inversion principle playing out. And I think it's a huge tactic. And you really have to start with the fundamentals, and that is, what is truth, what is reality and objective reality, what is nature. And, this is the structure, the foundation, and then you work your way up. But the inversion principle, that's a huge one that they utilize.
Yeah, like turning everything backwards.
It's upside down world. Yep. Stranger Things, man.
Today I had to deal with this banking issue, and it's like, I don't know how many times I've had to call this stupid number and listen to these machines, and they say they care about you. We're so glad you're our customer. Can you just hold on a while longer while we really don't care about you for a few more minutes? It's like, I was so frustrated, like I felt like I was getting like mad, and I'm saying to myself, it's just costing me energy getting mad. I need to settle down. And I wound up going into the bank, and I've like found the manager, and I'm like, can you just help me? And she turned out to be a really cool woman, and she did help me out. But it's so funny that even like the manager of a bank really doesn't have power over these machines at this point. And we've created such a strange, talk about inversion, world where the computers and the robots and the machines rule us. We drive around in the car, and the light tells us when we can go, and the cash register, she's not really the one that, she's like, I just work here, the machine tells me what to do. It's like inversion world big time.
It's
Anyway,
disgusting. That's such a belief,
crazy.
right? Well, the computer says so I have to do that. It's like you're just abdicating your responsibility. It's talk about disrespecting oneself, and people do this all the time in every category and facet.
Yeah.
Go ahead and push
if I could jump in right there, it has to do exactly. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Coming in good.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. This exactly has to do with what I wanted to bring up, and it's totally the inversion of the self, and it totally goes against self-respect. And what I wanted to bring up is the method of manipulation that I feel like flies under the radar, even for us, the natural law circles. And it's exactly that. We've been manipulated from young. It's been ingrained in us that self-interest is evil or immoral. This kind of thing that everything, and with those machines, it's the same thing. It's the ultimate inversion. It's the human being is not important, but the collective is, and that's the ultimate inversion. We've been told that, if you have something, then don't be too happy about it because somebody has less than you. This kind of thing we've been inundated with. And I see it as total inversion of the self, and that's the inversion of life itself. But natural law tells us the exact opposite. Natural law has a selfish element. I use the word selfish because the effects of nature's law are there for our personal benefit, right? We act morally towards other people, and that's what allows us to live freely, right? So the self is very much deeply connected. I know the Satanists take self-preservation as their first law, their first tenet. And so of course we oppose that because we don't want to be like the Satanists. So selfishness is bad, but really that's kind of like the baseline. Your selfishness is your first weapon against tyranny, your first defense against collectivism. And it's not selfishness to say you're going to exploit others. It's not that at all, because somebody with a real strong sense of self is not going to exploit others. So what's good in their interest is actually good for everybody.
Yes.
And but it starts from the individualism. And I see even us, we fall into this mind control all the time, because who wants to be selfish? Nobody, especially people who are strong and courageous. We want to be the ones to help others, but that gets weaponized against us, and then we get guilt tripped into supporting all of these things because we don't want to be called selfish or self-centered.
Yeah. It's love of self allows one to love others, right? Love of self allows love for all people. People who don't love themselves get stuck in opposition to others because of jealousies and insecurities. It's the root of all this, kind of base consciousness and the self-centered focus or priorities. Different. Yeah, thanks.
It's like, if you don't wear a mask or you don't get vaccinated, oh, you're selfish. If you don't vote or you don't support the troop, then you're selfish because, oh, don't you know they're fighting for you? This is the kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even in the truth community, and you take donations. You can't do that. Like people gaslight other truth speakers, and that people actually doing the one great work, saying, "Oh, you're asking for donations. You need resources. How dare you?" So it's like it's a big difference between selflessness and selflessness.
Right.
Yeah, we did a good talk with the Warriors, One Great Work Warriors, about the ego. And, the more we talked about the ego, we realized just what a misconception there is, that, the ego is a very important aspect of ourself that we need to learn how to nurture and understand. And our society has just turned that word like just to the negative connotation. And, I really like what you said there, Conrad, that's key. Like, self-preservation is the natural gift of life. All life wants to survive, right? Like, that's as natural as it gets. And in a lot of ways, our modern devices and our modern ways of living are tricking us out of that natural state of learning how to defend yourself. Even, like, we're creating thousands and thousands of weaklings that they could not defend themselves in any way. Like, I'm not happy about, I could be a lot better, if I'd spend more of my life working hard and exercising and being strong. Like, I could be even stronger and better than I am now. But our culture does not cherish that. It doesn't really put that as a main thing. Like, right now, when you are in school, the main thing is like, you got to be an engineer or a doctor. They're training people to be like super ultra technical, like computer. And I'm not saying you shouldn't learn those things either, but man, it is the real world out there still. And we do have to, if we are going to be self-responsible, we do have to be able to protect our own body. And like, I mean, I don't know. That's something that comes to my mind. I haven't heard anything from you yet. Chris, what do you got? You got anything on your mind?
Yeah, I've been writing some notes. I'll go in reverse order of what people brought up. So the last one on self-preservation. Yeah, it's a natural component to survive, but the point of the Satanism, as Passio puts it out, is self-preservation as the highest law, and that means that you're putting yourself above moral law, above natural law, above the reality and the truth. So you disregard that, and you always put yourself or those you care about above what's moral, and that's the bad point about it. And for people who don't understand, as Conrad put it, selfishness isn't a bad thing. They could check out Ayn Rand and objectivism, because that's one of her central tenets. And what's I think, Chris, you mentioned it too, what's good for you is ultimately what's good for everyone else. So in that sense, selfishness is not something bad. And then there's the negative side where you're just imbalanced, where it's just about yourself and your family. And it's not self plus others, self plus the all. where you get towards expanding your identification more with other people beyond yourself and your family. You identify and care and have more compassion at a wider circle that encompasses a wider circle, and then you can have more of that the agape care for all, and a moral path that aligns with that, the all of everybody, and not just that close circle that you only care what happens to them, yourself and your family or your friends. And yeah, this back to what Will was saying about the inversion. What came to my mind was that saying for the devil's greatest trick is convincing the world it didn't exist. Not a literal devil, but the devil is just you chop off the D and it's evil. So it's like a personification, anthropomorphization, externalization, reification of qualities that can inhabit our consciousness. And evil is sold under the guise of good. Evil hides behind the veil of good, and I've written about that in some of my work. And evil convinces others it doesn't exist. That's what the devil quote is that saying is essentially saying that the way evil perpetuates itself, it's not by saying, here, I'm evil and I'm looking for people to do evil. Do you want to join me in my quest for evil? And we'll just kill. Well, you might be safe, but we're going to kill everybody else, and then we're going to dominate everything and reduce the population or whatever. No, they sell it to people under like, we're going to help save the planet. We're going to ensure everyone is taken care of, and it's more control, more authority, and that's one way they sell this whole agenda. And one of the last points was. I think it was Chris mentioned the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. So that one has a dual aspect as well. On one side of the pole is the negative aspect of you become subservient to the collective. You subsume yourself to the collective, or your individual selfness and your selfishness is subsumed completely towards the collective and the group ideology and the mindset. But the positive side to that is, as I've talked about in my presentation on true freedom, is that's what it actually takes to get true freedom, is where each person owns their personal responsibility for their self-defense. And as that grows, well, whenever there's an injustice, well, oftentimes, let's say there's a group that does an injustice to you, but you can't get justice back. The debt can't be collected for the wrong done. There can't be restitution and rectification on your own a lot of the time. I don't know. Sorry, my kid is asking me where his mom is. Can you go look for her? No.
The quest for truth begins. Young.
1 minute, Kayla. Okay, I'll be done in a minute. Yeah, so the point about that was for truth, where you can't do it all on your own, because there's going to be groups of people who are violating your property rights and engaging in either temporary or persistent acts of enslaving you, claiming ownership over you. So the mindset that we all need to get to as a species is this all for one, one for all, where whenever there's an injustice, we all need to group together in order to bring back justice as the level, as the norm, the normality, and the standard of the condition and state that we exist in. And if we don't, then we're all alone, where we abandon each other. And whenever there's something wrong that happens, well, they don't get help. Well, that means you're not going to get help. And this ties into the reciprocity of the natural law. And the true freedom and justice is based on this understanding that can be simplified in this Three Musketeers, all for one, one for all, and the good side, not the collectivist side, where if there's an injustice done, it's an injustice against us all, because it also ties into that suffering that Passio popularized. As one suffers, we all suffer. And so if there's an injustice being done to one person, and they're being enslaved either temporarily or in a persistent manner, then there isn't actually true freedom either in your local area, and certainly not in the global sphere. So we have a lot of work ahead of us to do, but even in your local area, your community, if there's injustice being done to one, then there isn't true freedom in that area. Even if you individually have your freedoms, the state of true freedom hasn't been actualized in that area. So we need to work together in our shared moral unity aligned with natural law in order to work together to enact justice whenever there are injustices that are created by those who would violate our property rights and make claims of ownership upon our property, which is essentially an act of enslavement. I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, we got an eloquent speaker coming all the way from France at what, 3 a.m. in the morning, Derek?
Bonjour, bonjour. Good to see everyone, my friends. How y'all doing?
Hey.
Good. Thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for making
Yeah,
making the wake.
totally. There's an interesting take on the whole conformist collectivist side of, the true principle of care and the principle of inversion, and how they've flipped that around and remember the propaganda of hey, we're all in this together type of thing. And apparently it was all in this together to, impede on the rights of everyone in the world type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, the methods of manipulation, it's been doing more than just sweeping the nation. But, going into just the infrastructure and how things have been built around certain industries and corporations, and think of the taking it back to early 20th century with the light bulb conspiracy, which was an actual conspiracy. It was a fucking cartel that put this into effect, kind of cut the lifespan of light bulbs in half to just sell more units and get their economy going. The fat cats are dicking up the pockets. And sorry, Nikola Tesla and the world, we can't have that free energy type of thing. So it just perpetuates that kind of dog-eat-dog economic type of thing. And the automotive industry and how that just kind of shaped a lot of how America is. You go to Europe and there's a lot of great public transportation. People have been manipulated, for over a century in America to kind of just have all these roads. And that's led to a separation of just people you meet walk into the metro type of thing. Of course, there are metros and stuff like that in America, but it's a lot less frequent. And not everyone's trying to live in a big ass city. But, all that aside, there's just the vicious cycle of how the economy is just producing all this junk, and, we're consuming all this stuff tenfold than what we did yesteryear. It's getting more and more as this quickening of technology and all this stuff is going on. And I think we mentioned of last episode of just how hand in hand with the up leveling of technology, there's going to be a plethora of new ways of manipulating people or societies through those things. So that, and they're pushing it through. Obviously the media, a la Bernays and all those other ways. And people have to understand, they have their people's champions and the talking heads, and for ways that regular people identify with them to a sense, and their heartstrings are getting pulled in certain directions. Think of emotional mind control with that. And any kind of mind control, emotional, all that stuff, the modus operandi is to control someone's behaviors, and the controllers, whatever resource they want to have a profit from it, from monetary out and human energy type of thing. It's a big old human farming in a sense, and we're raping and pillaging the earth at the same time. And they're turning it around, pointing at the finger on us climate change and all this stuff, when the whole time we've been hogtied by these corporations, the oligarchies and the oiligarchies, Rockefeller and company, backed up by the bankster, prankster, wanksters of, Rothschild and all those, crusty fogies, whatever. But yeah, there's so many interwoven things within the fabric of society in our daily lives, and it's gotten to the point where, I mean, for a long time, people have just been playing themselves. They're, living way below their actual potential, and they haven't really actualized themselves, had proper knowledge of self, and obviously through the education system, and Will, like you touched on, the principle of inversion, of course, right? So education is really key, and so yeah, conscious parenting, right? So yeah, and pass it on.
Thanks, Derek.
Merci beaucoup.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's good words from everyone. Something Leslie said kind of stuck out for me about words, and I don't know how much we discussed this last time, but like the way words have been changed. Welcome, Fred. Fred's joined us from the Libercast. The way words have affected us and the way we think about words, a big part of my like realizations came in the form of like redefining words and re-recognizing what words meant. And that's why, on a lot of our shows and presentations, you'll see us going to the etymology of words and being like, which, it's interesting to note that words do change over time, but who's changing them, and how are they getting changed? A lot of people don't recognize the power of think tanks. And I recommend people go on your browser and type in think tanks, and you're going to start getting some really big, interesting names. And you can imagine buildings and warehouses of buildings that are just bringing in fresh college students and putting them in their little cubicles and saying, study this, research this, what are the words that get people's attention? What are the images that gets people's attention? If you had unlimited money to affect people's mind, you could create colleges and universities and books all to gather information about how to affect people's mind to get them to do what you would like them to do. And as hard as that is to imagine, that's exactly what's been done. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Fred. Did you have something you wanted to add to the conversation?
Oops, you're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah.
Well, so thank you, Chris, and hi, everyone. Good evening to all of you.
Hello.
Thank you for having me. The method of manipulation is my line. So actually, I'm more of a shadow worker aspect. I try to bring this aspect of self-awareness, and I think this is one of the part that it lacks a lot because of the consequence of the culture that we're living in. And I'm talking about culture here, but actually culture is way wider than we think it is. It goes through religion, it goes through governments, it goes through creeds and cults in society. And what these things prevent us to do is looking inward. Why? Because when we're stuck looking for someone to point out for all the problems, we're not sticking in it here. This is where the work begins, actually. And I would argue that there's no other way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Self-awareness is like the first step to recovery in every aspect: psychological, emotional, and spiritual. What point? And I'm not talking about flaws, all flaws. I'm talking about everything: the good thing and the bad thing, the flaws that you have, everybody have. And what makes it insidious is because it's ingrained into our genetic behaviors, because we were raised this way. It's only that. And the solution is very simple. If the problem resides in the mind, the solution will be in the mind, in the mental realm. There's no way that you're going to have different goals, different issues with doing the same thing that leads to the problem. You cannot just take this mask out when you're in your home and put it back when you're with other people. There's a thick validation hungry behavior. I don't know if I express myself well, but what it means is we're trying instinctively to get the validation from the others. Your parents, your friends, the groups, the clubs, the religions, the political parties, and and I can see it everywhere. Even we all have biases. At some point we're not like flawless. So there's a balance, a delicate balance between the two, and I think the root of what we need is self-communication. Are you able to deal with these shadows that you always have them? Even if you do the shadow work, you'll still have them. It's not the solution is not to put them into a drawer, and put them away. It's to deal with it. It's simple, but it's not really simple for a lot of people, even for me. Even after all these years, I still have flaws. I make mistakes, but that's okay. And this shadow that I have, I not only control it, but I can make peace with it.
Yeah, I don't think that there's nowhere in our school or early part of our life, unless I got lucky that I had a father who asked me these questions. He actually had me write down these questions. Who are you?
Hmm.
What are you doing? What do you intend to do with your life? Like questions like that seemed unanswerable, but he had me like when I would get in trouble, I'd have to like write essays about stuff like that. But like, why do we waste kids' time in school with all this other crap, but we avoid the most important questions of all?
Mm.
Like that should be the beginning, is to understand how self works. How self work is, that life is a continuing process of putting yourself through the fire, burning yourself to ashes, and reigniting yourself and relearning and giving away, sheathing off parts of yourself that no longer serve you and trying to be a better person. That's what we're here for, and that's what gives us a big part of what gives us meaning. And without that process that you're describing of doing that shadow work, what people are doing is they're just I forgot who was saying it. Somebody was saying identifying with whatever, a group, because it feels good to belong, because it's like a second best to actually having meaning, is just to kind of grab onto someone else's meaning. And that's what we've taught people to do with statism on the mass scale.
Yeah, I was thinking about, well, one, the question, for everyone is, who am I? And that's a deep question. And it's not, just, you don't find that out by looking externally and copying what other people do. It's an inward journey. And along with what Chris was saying, we're not taught about our own psychology. We're not, as that what has been occulted from humanity is understanding of the self, of their self, and the power of their own mind and body. There's a lack of understanding of the potential and power of humans, our own technology, which is untapped. And there's good reason to obfuscate that, because if we do know our power, then we will be more powerful than evil and anything that is trying to threaten our lives, and because if we know our power and we join together appreciating each other, we're not going to stand to be devalued or hurt. So it's really very deep, and it's also the obfuscation of the powers of nature and how we can synergize with nature to create real harmony. You know, we can harmonize with nature and really have, I really can feel like this potential for greatness of life itself and harmony for all, you know, if we can all align on the principles.
Absolutely, Leslie. I love this part specifically, and Fred, I'm so happy you brought it up. The shadow work part, and you mentioned recovery too. I'm a former addict. I've recovered from a lot of stuff. This is exactly the thing. And Chris, you mentioned it too. It's about the self work. I kind of focus on this specifically, like my own personal take on it. I have these videos called the Warrior Path. You know, it's really this journey of self mastery. Uh, and the big method of manipulation is that there is no heroic journey needed, that man doesn't need to be a hero. This is the main method of manipulation. On the one hand, they tell us, oh, you're selfish, you're bad, but nobody tells you, hey, you have to change. And there's a whole path, there's a whole initiation, there's a whole thing. This is what I've done. I mean, Mark talks about this too, you know, the shadow work, breaking yourself down and working from the ground up, and to get to a point where you look yourself in the mirror and you're happy, not that the journey's over, but you're happy that, hey, you're in this now, you're in this war. I mean, that this is the whole thing we're doing, right? And it's obviously men and women too, men, women, and children, but I focus on the men, you know, like the hero's journey, the true man in here. Like it's a beautiful universe here, and there's a whole lot of work to do. It's just nobody seems to think, or most people seem to think, there's no work to be done, and that there's no reason to aspire to be a great man.
Mm-hmm. You know, the first exposure of manipulation that every human experiences is obviously in the family dynamic. Every experience, the first structure is the family dynamic, right? So it's like, what are you being exposed to? I mean, even genetic manipulation and modification starts within the family. So my building off of what Fred and Conrad said about self-awareness is that people don't think deeply, not only deeply, clearly as well. And I think this also stems from the family structure, where parents don't ask their kids stimulating questions, deep questions, philosophical questions. So they're not philosophically minded. You have to have philosophy, right? There's two ways to create change. They go together, philosophy and technology. Philosophy is internal, that internal dialogue of asking big questions about oneself or reality and nature. And then technology, which is the external solution. So if someone's not taking that first step, having that first seed of philosophical thought, asking oneself, why do I do the things that I do? Why do I believe this? What makes this tick, etc., etc.? Then you're never going to get to a place, not never, it will be very difficult to get to a place of self-realization. And usually it takes a great deal of suffering, bottoming out, right? Till finally it's like, oh, well, shit, maybe I need to look at myself and analyze what's going on, right? That correlative thinking isn't there. And again, bringing it back to parenting and the family structure, parents can stimulate this at a young age, because guess what? Children are already there. It just needs to be sparked, right? Children are always asking why and thinking deep. Why is the sky blue? Why this? Why that? It's just silenced in the family. It's not promoted and propagated. So it just, the light dims out, and you know, the calcification sets in.
That's so big, Will. I was just doing some writing on that, something I'm working on, and it's all about why. I could guarantee you right now that, 99.9% of YouTube videos, news stations, any kind of media you're going to bring up right now, it's all about what happened, when it happened, where it happened. They're all what type questions, but no one's asking why. That's so rare. And that's what all our, one great work is all about. Why? And that's the question that we need to be stimulating in ourselves and in others.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, Chris.
No, go.
That's the most important. That's the most important question to ask is why, and then like the what, how, when, and all that. I think should come immediately after. But why is the most important question. And what you were saying, Will, about questions being kind of well in our modern fractured world, it's been considered this like bad thing to do is to ask questions when you are not sure of something. And this has somehow been turned into like a sin almost into like general society. You go and you ask your parent, your boss, your educator, your steward, or whatever it is, a question, and all of a sudden you are taking up too much space or time or energy or like, or you're stupid because you're asking a question that may seem obvious to everybody else. But like what you guys were all saying, like it does start with care, and you have to have care for yourself, enough care for yourself to have that, like, I mean, just self-respect, self-dignity, all that, to be able to create, like, put that out in the world and create that in your environment. And I think I'm a lot like Fred in the way what he was saying. He called it bringing self-awareness to others is, you know, I think I do more that kind of stuff, you know, through like, you know, just the knitting class that I do. So it's just like sitting people down and giving them that subtle understanding that develops in them that I've noticed in people, that like they have worth, or they have value, they are supposed to be here. And we live in this modern fractured society that is all training us in that we don't have any worth or value except for whatever, you know, the parasitic class says we have value of. And this is the majority of people. And I'm finding that because people are not seeing their own worth and caring about who they are, what they are, why they are, you know, and just their general worth, because they have an inherent worth.
Yes.
They were born worthy. They don't feel like they even have that much. So to me, I can see how it's very difficult for people to get past that, to be able to look at the wider view of our world and be like, you know, they, even though they can see it, they can understand it, they can recognize it, but they can't even get near that because they're like, well, I don't have any worth or value. I'm nothing. That means nothing I would do would actually like change anything. So they stay hidden away within themselves. And so I don't know, I feel like that is kind of where a lot of us need to start, is like, you know, once you've figured that out for yourself, you know, give that back. That's like the best kind of charity you could give, is give people their worth back.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, like,
Well
get real, right? Get real, get reality. You know, I had this picture in my head while you're talking of like, you know, a little kid on a video game system in their room, right? And like a lot of people are living out their life like the little kid on the video game. They're living their whole life in that avatar, and no one ever shook them and said, "No, it's a video game. You're in your body. You need to wake up in your body and live that life." And like, I don't think a lot of people have been introduced to the fact that this is something to be doing, you know, like the shadow work and realizing what you are is like what I like to call it, the most amazing technology that the universe has created. We're like human 7.0, or, you know, 2024.0, whatever you want to call it. We're the newest version of humans. You know what I mean? It's a pretty amazing gift in terms of when you look around you on the planet or the universe, like, you know, even the giant mountain can't cut the tree down. You know what I mean? it's like we have this incredible power to change and also affect other people's mind. Talk about manipulation. And everything right up to that point when you steal is good. You can sell, you can persuade, you can, there's all different ways to teach and affect. That's what's so important to have children and all. But like what we're trying to do now is we're trying to sell an idea, we're trying to affect other people's mind. We're trying to and the more authentic, the more you're coming from a place of reality and saying, here I am, like being honest, I'm Chris Jansen, like this is what I do. This is, like the more we can come straight across, I think the better chance we have of relaying that message. But, do people have ears to hear? That remains to be heard.
I want to add that this is a spiritual process, right? This is a spiritual work. All that we're talking about is what true spirit is about. Our spirit within us and around us, right? This life itself and the valuing of that. And I love what Sarah was saying about the value. And I agree wholeheartedly. And all the people that I talk to in my work, it comes down to this sense of a person devaluing themselves and not feeling worthy, right? And that is, if people can't get past that, you're right, they're not going to have this sustenance, the power to stand up to what's happening in the world.
But they're unconscious to it, right? Because it's all about how you feel. Let me tell you how you need to address me. Let me tell you my truth. It's all this stuff. So there's this acceptance of just being mediocrity and not stepping onto the path of the seeker and taking that journey, which ultimately that stems from one of the biggest methods of manipulation, and that's the primal fears, right? The primal fear of death, of failing and learning from that lesson, et cetera, et cetera. So people just accept me for who I am and how I act, and et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
wanted to add that in there.
Yeah. Hey, Brendan Spencer, I know you got some ideas.
Cracking, man.
I'm thinking to myself because Will's like literally bringing up topics that we're going to talk about in future shows, and I'm just like, oh man, like
I
Will's
saw that
killing
steam
it.
coming out of your ears right there.
Yeah, but the how primal fears. That's what how I had talked about in the original one, and how they manipulate that. They always take like our baseline, like animalistic instincts, and then they help manipulate us because we don't quite know that we are fearful of certain things, like predators, darkness, abandonment, and chaos. And I always say that those four fall under the umbrella of death, because you'll never really do have the right thing. You'll never really will start to do the shadow work. You'll never really start to be a teacher of natural law. You never really start to use your true voice if deep down you fear being kicked out of the group, being kicked out of the family gathering, being ostracized. Because at the end of the day, you have to give up that fear of death, because to walk that path of truth. And how we're all talking about the path of the individual, because that's pretty much what we are pretty much talking about. The most powerful thing in any society is the individual, and once we start to lose sight of that, then we start to pretty much tap into those primal fears. And once we fall into those primal fears, then that's just certain forms of manipulation and our energy that can be, used held against us. And how, like I said earlier, true education is the key. That's the only way we're going to get out of the situation. So we have to educate ourselves on these methods, then start to use these same methods, and incorporating them so we can become powerful. How once we've done our own work, start using these methods to influence, to try to inspire, how using these technologies to try to put the word out, sort of like, how we are doing. So yeah, the primal fears.
Yeah,
Great
like
point,
if
Will.
Derek, you're up. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, before we stray away too long, I wanted to touch back up on that 3-letter word, because it reminded me of, I few instances, and it was kind of infuriating at times. And it kind of made me realize, hey, Derek, you got some self worth to be confronting certain, like, I'm sure this happened to you guys, right? In any kind of work environment, someone that has a more superior position than you, telling you to do this or that and this and that, and you're kind of sometimes like you don't understand, and you ask why. Have you ever been told like, hey, you don't need to know why, just do it, type of thing?
Yeah.
That shit pissed me off so fucking much, and I'm like, this guy's trying to hide something from me. That's manipulation right there.
Mhm.
And you could play that out in like so many different instances throughout society and all that. And going back to self-worth and going back to what I was talking about with the whole, just how planned obsolescence, it's at almost an all-time high. I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like things are made so cheaply now, they're breaking down hella quick, even like appliances and shit like that. And it kind of like plays on the subconscious. And even think about like housing and architecture to a degree where if there's not like that beauty and quality to it, that is like a reflection on people, and they might have less of a feeling of self-worth in a sense. And it's like you wonder why people want to get into the rat race, Chris, with your trap within a trap and all that stuff. We mentioned that a little bit, but to go out, get the money, and then to spend it on like super expensive stuff, because that's like a sign of, wow, you got quality stuff or whatever, even though a lot of corporate bullshit is just made in China and sold for a high price because they got the people's champions parading with their shit on, and they got endorsements or whatever the fuck. So it's just all these self-perpetuating cycles that they just have to throw some new stuff in there, and it just people catch onto it and fucking run with it. It's unfortunate, but bringing up methods of this manipulation.
Yeah.
So
Good examples.
Chris, what's up with the situation?
Yeah, it's going to be manipulation pretty soon here with the technology that we're doing. They're going to manipulate you right in your forehead when you're born before you get a chance to do anything about it. A lot of it's stuff like that comes in subtle, little by little. It's been slipped in here and there. But I would really wanted to jump off something that Brandon was saying that made me think about, like you get blown by the wind if you're not truly anchored to the ground, right? And so if someone doesn't have that real sense of themselves, if they haven't asked the why questions like Fred had talked about, doing the self-work, really thinking about who you are, why are you here, what's the point of the actions you're doing and taking, if you haven't gone through that thought process, what most people likely have done is sort of just glommed on to another belief system of somebody else, or they kind of like need that ego identification, so they joined a belief system or a group or stories that have been told for generations, what their parents have been telling them. And if you just do that, as soon as something comes along that's bright and shiny, you're really susceptible to fall for tricks. Talk about traps within traps, Derek, right? The trap, you don't fall for the trap so easily if you're firmly on your own foundation. And the methods of manipulation in our society are we have an expectation that somebody else is going to take care of our health, that we're going to farm out our security, and the cops are going to take that for us. We're going to have these military that are going to protect our borders. And by farming all these things out, we lose that base, that foundation, that responsibility, that knowledge of what we are and how strong we are, and what we can take and what we can do as a group or as a tribe or as this individual, because we farmed it out all over the place. And so the more you do that over time, and don't have any of those connections, then people are just kind of like blown around by all these silly ideas and stories because they don't have any root, any solid footing.
Yeah, I could tie into that's one of the big parts of self-worth, where you can gain more self-worth, recognize your self-worth by taking on these important aspects of responsibility that you mentioned. When you, rather than farm them out, and you own up to your responsibilities, then you I guess you get a more of a purpose and a meaning in your life, and that amplifies your self-worth naturally. And it also ties into another thing you had said before, regarding Avatar. And people who are gaming, this is a huge part of the method of manipulation, where it's getting people into escapism, and that takes them away from owning personal responsibility, and it devalues them because they're just escaping to another world rather than living in this world that we actually exist in. So that keeps their self-worth diminished. And yeah, and for what Sarah said, just an idea is people could have like you say, you talk to a lot of people who have this problem of not recognizing the value of themselves as an individual, and their self-worth is a book club on the book End of All Evil, because in that part, a big part of it is the infinite value of the individual. So if they had a book club on that book, they would learn a lot of key topics, and it's only like an 80-page book or something.
Good idea.
Well, I do that with every class that I do, because I've done it for years and years, and I've noticed that one specific trait across the board, men, women, children, everybody who walks in, is that, and that's because of our society, like how our society is being currently built by people who we don't want to have any control of it. But in the class, how I operate is I will be teaching the knitting or crochet or whatever it is, and giving them that sense of like, oh crap, I made this thing. But I'm also giving them stuff that I like I write out and I print out, and I give them stuff like with whatever patterns and just throw that stuff in, and then like resources, and like we end up talking about stuff like that. So it comes in, and then they're just like, oh, I find out that they actually looked into whatever that was we were talking about.
That's cool.
Yeah. The knitting, it ties in with the responsibility. It all ties in with what you guys were just saying, because when you take responsibility, what do you take it in? You take it into your own hands. And Chris, you talked about this on the last episode. You're a carpenter. I do construction. I'm a general contractor. And what's manipulation? It's doing things with your hands, and that's what makes human beings the most magnificent machine in the universe. Of course, it's the mind. It starts with the mind, but it's our ability to manipulate our environment, meaning using tools and making, molding nature to express. It expresses with us. We're co-expressing with nature, and it's all about manipulation, not the negative sense of the word, but your hands. And it's about taking responsibility into your hands. And the value and dignity, Sarah, with people doing the knitting. Actually, it's like kids. They figure out they want to do something, they apply themselves to it, and if they succeed, then their value rises, their self-worth rises. And that's what it's all about. And the hand is anatomically the symbol of work. We're the great workers. This is what we need to do. So it's really all about the hand. It's interesting.
I gotta hand it to you. That's a good
mano
answer.
y mano.
The etymology of manipulation, it means handful.
Wow.
Yep.
It's like this power that we have in our hands to do good or evil, and it's a responsibility. It's like an amazing gift and a responsibility that we have this choice. And we need knowledge of morality, because that's what it comes down to, is to what are we going to create? And we need to have a moral code, and that is where natural law comes in. And when one violates that moral code or violates natural law and uses violence to manipulate for self-gain, then there is trauma, right? Traumatization of people. And that is where people get knocked off their ground, right? And where they lose their sense of value and worth. And there's a great sense of betrayal, right? And you can look at, lots of evidence of this being an intentional traumatization of humanity over hundreds and thousands of years. And there's I think a sense of, imagine, part of waking up is waking up to that, and that most deep betrayal, and that's the abandonment wound, the cosmic abandonment, and it's that hardest thing to face, to look in the mirror and feel and see. So, the psychology and the shadow work and understanding who we are, who am I, and who are you, with curiosity and care and love and compassion to all of what's alive, is really what we're trying to cultivate here.
The tool of what we're using, which we are using for doing the great work, is voice, words, rhetorics. But there's an aspect that we must not put aside and forget, and it's understanding. The words, the roots of the words are as much important as how they're placed into a sentence. And it's very powerful, and it's a great responsibility to express this work in a manner that it is vulgarized and appealing for much people, because the attention span of people is 5 minutes. So what we deal with is and I'm not talking that I'm not like over that. I can have a attention span from time to time. When you have children, when you raise your children, your attention is going all there, because they need you, they need your hands, they need your voice, they need your self-confidence, they need your self-respect. And I think this relation that we have with our children is not that different with other people around us, our relative and our friends. And what I tend to bring back a lot is empathy. We lack empathy into society. And I think this is where we have to put our energy in.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
natural law is showing us these things. It's showing us the way to acquire this self-empathy, this self-respect, this self-worth that you were talking earlier. And I enjoy your conversation very much, because we have to talk about these things and repeat it as much as we can for the people to understand it. It's not easy. We have to repeat a lot. When I'm doing my podcast in French, the field is empty. I only have Chris on my side. I don't know anybody else who's doing the work. So the work is huge, and the mountain, it's not easy to climb, because you're gonna get knocked back again and again and again, because this is what life is all about. Life is a game. Are you able to do you want to get played, or you want to play the game? This is where we have to take our stand as humans. And it's this realization there, I think it's worth everything. It's worth a 1,000 words, 1,000 feelings and emotions. Humans have the power of creation. So essentially, we're building what we are like ingesting as information and as food, and entertainment, if we can call it that way. Entertainment is everywhere now. There's so much noise into everywhere. The people are the people. Most people that I'm talking to, they're not self-aware.
Correct.
They're not respecting themselves. And this is why I tend to keep the approach of approaching a child or a kid.
Yeah,
Am
and
I
that
better than the others? No. I just realized the value of my own life, of the life of my children, of the life of my neighbors, of the life of all these people, these strangers that I don't know. I recognize their value.
Yeah.
Do I make less mistakes? No, I still have my experiences, you know. But what I want to bring is why I bring words and communication is because we don't have any debates.
Hmm.
We don't have anyone who wants to bring a contrary opinion so we can grow through the philosophical way.
Hmm.
This is how we're growing as humans with the interrelationship. You know, you're building, you're in your world, you're doing your things, and you're like tapping, and then you meeting someone, and these people are saying you 2 words or 3 words or a sentence. It changed everything.
Mhm.
The you can see through the experience of the others what you can do that will make you hurt or not.
Mhm.
And this is why we have to stand into the cause and not in the effect.
Mhm.
We are learning from our mistake, sure, but we're growing up from the mistakes from the others. And people forgot that. Our children will could say that children will observe you, and they will repeat the patterns of your behaviors. So they will mirror you in your behavior, in their behaviors.
Mhm.
And people in this relation, you're going to work, you're going to your family, people will reflect you what you are.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
different, it's not different from the children. We are all one. We're
Mhm.
all in this correspondence principle.
Yeah.
There's no separation there. Whether you think you're better or you're more smarter, it doesn't matter. You're gonna stumble upon someone who's gonna get way smarter than you and way
Mhm.
more cunning than you.
Mhm.
We have to be truthful about ourselves, our behaviors, our words, and take responsibility for all of them. It's
yeah, there's
simple.
no destination point. It's not like, oh, you get enlightened and
Yeah.
oh, I reach enlightenment. I'm there. Nope, that's not how it
Mm.
works. Like the most wise of all of us would be the one who
Yep.
would admit that I still have a lot more to learn, and there's going to be more layers of this onion to unwrap. And I really like that you brought up the fact, Fred, that the mountain of overwhelm. I think Leslie's Powers work a lot at Life Thrive, and her presentations have talked a lot about the trauma. People are all, because of all these methods of manipulation, people are all traumatized in a lot of ways, all of us included, that make it hard to interact with other human beings and see that realness that you're talking about with interconnectedness. Fred,
Mhm.
thanks for that. That was beautiful things you had to say. And to kind of close things up here, I wanted to read the quote that Sarah brought up from my favorite book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. The value of man, and this includes women. He used the word man to mean both. Don't take it the wrong way. Folks, the value of humans. To understand freedom is to understand the value of a person. Everything that evil wants is to disguise and destroy your value. All authority is created by evil men to disguise your worth, evil women too. To understand your own worth is to understand the nature of liberty. So, really, what we're talking about, with all that is reevaluating, re-understanding your worth and your value. And if we do that and we understand that everybody else has that value and how immense it is, we're going to respect life in a different way, and we're going to fight for the value of those choices that life gets to make in a different way. So that's where I'm going to conclude. If anybody else had something they were still itching to say, the floor is still open, and we'll kind of close up after that.
I will just say that I think you guys are beautiful people, and I'm so happy to have spent my Thursday night or Friday morning in France, but spent it here with you guys. So thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Conrad, for joining us. It's good to have your face here and your wonderful voice and thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a power team here. Love it. It's been really fun.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Love your show, man. Everyone here
Absolutely.
doing some fine work, and let's keep it going. Appreciate you all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
I had one little box that I wanted to tick off, and you kind of scratched it already, Chris. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Alice in Wonderland programming, something like that, where, yeah, it's like the narrative keeps shifting a little bit. You're not anchored, and you're kind of like, blowing in the wind of, this week something changes and they might contradict themselves, or they might get, exposed to something, so they have to go back on their word and all this stuff. And your average television watcher looks at all this stuff and they're just like, I don't know what to believe anymore. But it's like this, the cognitive dissonance with the Stockholm syndrome, where they just keep going back because that's kind of like all they know. And things are so like digitally kind of like walled off as far as like Google searches now, to a good degree, or even like DuckDuckGo and all that. So yeah, there's that to consider. Not to end it on a sour note, I love everyone's solutions and all that stuff. I think it was a cool turnaround from, it's not all just like doom and gloom learning about this stuff anyways. It's more to be empowered so we can kind of navigate this better and not be played, and play ourselves and play our brothers and sisters at the same time. All that shit. Being more aligned to natural law,
Yeah.
So I want to personally thank all of you for your work. And
you too, Fred.
For me, it's you're all inspiring through your work. And for the people listening right now, share this shit up. It needs to go out. These kind of conversations are rare. So put this stuff up, And for the people who are still sitting on their ass doing nothing, this is now. The time is now to do something about it, and not waiting for it to happen by itself. It's not going to happen. So keep up the great work, guys. Your conversation are always awesome. I did really like the one about compromise. This one was very good.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, this stuff is awesome, and thank you to all of you people.
Well, we plan on keeping it coming, and there'll be more roundtables to come. And I'm really glad that, I said to Brandon before, we started this, that I'm really lucky and blessed to have 9 or 10 or 12 people I can invite of this caliber, that have, really insightful things to say. And I really appreciate knowing you guys, and we're going to keep it going. And with that, I'll say good night, and we'll come back next week. And have a great week, guys. Thanks.
Good night, everybody. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
It's
Chris.
fun.
Bye.
I feel like the Brady Bunch.
Peace out.
Oh my God.
I got the perfect video, since what Fred was saying. My little "It's Up to You" video. I'll put that on, and we'll close out with that. Good night, guys.
It's the game show. Oh my gosh.
ultimately, it's up to you.